There comes a moment in every man's life, a silent, soul-crushing moment, when all his fantasies, all his illusions begin to crack. He starts seeing clearly the very things he once chased blindly. Love, companionship, a future where someone finally says, I understand you. But what if all of that was just a lie? Schopenhauer didn't just ask this question, he tore through the entire illusion. He wasn't a man seeking comfort. He was a man who refused to look away from the dark system of human desire. To him, romance wasn't a refuge. It was a trap, a biologically engineered bait, designed by nature, beautiful on the surface, but rooted in reproduction. What the world calls love, Schopenhauer called a delusion. What we call intimacy, he exposed as a fantasy wrapped in biology. And that connection you think is pure, he saw as pain just dressed a little prettier. To Schopenhauer, the difference between men and women wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Men are driven by ideas, creation, legacy. Women are grounded in survival, in the now. In his words, women remain children their whole lives. They live in the immediate in appearances. They hold on to the moment and call the illusion truth. This wasn't an insult. It was an unfiltered peek into nature's mind. So what was beauty really? To Schopenhauer, beauty was just a mask, a biological lure meant to blind a man's judgment, to steer him away from his mission and enslave him with his own desires. And it works again and again. History proves it. Kings, warriors, philosophers, empire builders, they didn't fall to war or ideas, but to a soft smile and a whisper they never understood. He said, women didn't possess brute strength or grand ideas, so they mastered subtlety, emotional manipulation, not in the battlefield, but in the bedroom, in the spaces where men are most vulnerable, inside their desires. Where men build the world, women, silently, reshape the man building it, with charm, with emotion, by becoming a need, and society romanticizes it. They call it love. They call it sacred. But to Schopenhauer, it was just a transaction, a biological compulsion dressed as poetry. Love wasn't divine. It was a trick, a strategy of life itself to replicate. Not your happiness, not your purpose, just reproduction. Nature implants a fantasy in your heart. It shows you something that never really existed. Tells you this woman is different. This time it's real. And by the time you realize the truth, you've already surrendered. Schopenhauer didn't call marriage sacred. He called it a legal deception, signed in hope, paid for in regret. He saw men who once dreamed freely, now trapped in routines, obligations, and silent despair. And when the beauty fades, when the magic wears off, what's left? Emptiness, resentment, and a broken silence where dreams once lived. The fire once meant for mission now burns for maintenance. The soul that once wanted to explore the world now settles for convenience. This isn't hatred. This is awareness, a warning. Schopenhauer didn't blame women. He called them unconscious agents of nature. Not villains, just survivors, ensuring the safety of themselves and their children. And to do that, they evolved a new kind of power, not logic, not force, but emotional influence, intuition, soft domination. And men lose because they think the battle's logical, but the real war is primal. So men build homes that no longer feel like theirs. They chase careers whose rewards serve others. They dream until their dreams become burdens. And the most dangerous part, they convince themselves this is life. This sacrifice is noble. But somewhere deep inside, there's a quiet voice, now silenced. A fire that no longer burns. And that, Schopenhauer said, is the tragedy. Not that men love, but that they love blindly. They give their soul to an illusion they never even questioned. Desire becomes destiny. Seduction becomes sincerity. And when the illusion breaks, it's not just a heart that's shattered, but an entire life. Schopenhauer's brilliance wasn't in his bitterness, it was in his clarity. He stripped away every fake emotion and exposed the raw system underneath. He never called men oppressors. He called them victims of their own longing. He believed man's nature is noble. He builds empires, decodes science, takes on the biggest questions of existence. But all of that can collapse in an instant the moment he bends to his unconscious craving, when validation replaces vision, when he starts living for applause, not purpose, when he reshapes himself to be more desirable, he forgets who he was. That, to Schopenhauer, was the real betrayal, not of society, but of the self. And what's the worth of a man who's forgotten himself? When his voice is no longer his own, he doesn't fall to hardship, he falls to love, or rather, the illusion of it, that sweet poison disguised as emotional connection. And here, Schopenhauer reveals a hidden truth. A woman doesn't need force to dominate. She rules by presence, by charm, by silence. She rarely asks. The man simply gives. He offers sacrifice without being asked. And from there begins the slow erosion. First goes the time once meant for his mission. Then fades the fire he once felt for his craft. And finally, he loses the solitude that birthed his deepest ideas. And the man who once stood tall is now on his knees, not in worship, but exhaustion. His life's purpose is no longer his mission, but maintenance. His dreams now shrunk for someone else's comfort. And society calls it maturity, responsibility, true love. But Schopenhauer asks, is this really growth, or is it surrender? A truly awakened man doesn't hate women. He understands them. He doesn't reject love. He sees it as it is. A force to be respected, not worshipped. And most of all, he protects his soul from the things that once promised joy, but only delivered distraction. This is not a call to isolation. It's a call to awareness. To pause and ask, am I the man I once dreamed of becoming? Or have I just become a version that made peace with comfort and called it love? Schopenhauer's voice wasn't anger, it was clarity, a quiet truth echoing across generations, calling every man to return to himself before it's too late.